Hi. The film I will be talking about today is The Minus Man. This film is based off of the novel written by Lou McCreary. It was directed by Hampton Fancher, who also wrote the screenplay. This film has quite the eclectic cast. It stars Owen Wilson, Brian Cox, Mercedes Rule, Janine Garofalo, Larry Miller, Dwight Yoakam, John Carroll Lynch, and Sheryl Crow. Not your everyday cast. This was a film that I had never heard of until a year or two ago. It showed up on one of those random movie channels. I don't ever even remember having heard about it. It is honestly unlike any film I have ever seen. The beginning of the film is so hypnotic. It just starts, the first shot, we just see an old Ford truck. That's it. Then all of a sudden, Owen Wilson's character appears in the frame. And he begins washing the truck, and the music that's accompanying it while the credits are rolling and, directed by and those things in the cast's name. And it is such a quiet, eerie beginning to the film, and it sets the tone perfectly. This is a film about a serial killer. This is anything but a slasher film. I have little regard for most slasher films. Most of them seem to me to be nothing but like a trip to an amusement park, a thrill ride. How many times can it scare you? Can it make you jump back in your seat? And my biggest problem with most slasher films is they're all centered around surprise. It's what you don't know is behind the door. And it's why with a lot of them, after you've seen them, you've seen it. There is no point to go back. Once you know what's behind the door, who cares? This film is a character study. And what this film deals with is what Hannah Arendt called the banality of evil, and how common it is, how around us it is, how it doesn't have distinctive features. And it almost made me think of it didn't almost make me think, it made me think of the W.H. Auden quote, where he said, "Evil is always unspectacular and shares our bed and eats at our own table." This film captures that in a way that I can't think of any other film, that ever has. Most of them, if they deal with even the topic of a serial killer, there's got to be a lot of gore. And if there's not that, if they fall in that psychological vein, there's a lot of whodunit and plot twists, and you thought it was this person, and then at the very end you reveal that it's this one, it's the guy that we never thought that it was, and it all builds to the big reveal. Well, with this film, we know right out of the gate, early on, that Owen Wilson's character, Van, is evil. And we find out less than 10 minutes into the film. And yet, we're still scared. With a lot of films, like I said, once you know what's behind the door, you're not scared anymore. With this film, we know what's going on early. We know who the perpetrator is. And it is one of the most peculiar experiences you'll ever have watching a film, because you're watching someone who seems so detached from what he's doing. It's such a great performance by Owen Wilson. He delivers it in such a quiet manner. The first real scene with any dialogue in it takes place in a bar with John Carroll Lynch and Sheryl Crow. And Owen Wilson's character, Van, walks in. And the bartender asks what would he like. And he says, "Do you have pie?" And the way he says it, Owen Wilson kind of has that sing-song voice. And his character possesses this almost virginal innocence. And he almost reminds me of the character Woody Harrelson played on Cheers, Woody Boyd, of the farm boy from Indiana, who has a charming naivete. That's what he exudes when he walks through. And the bartender has no use for him, and Sheryl Crow's character, who says her name is Casper in the film, is a down-on-her-luck kind of a junkie sitting there with a cigarette, nursing her drinks. And Owen Wilson seems so out of place in this environment. and you can't even picture his character having a drink. He ends up offering to give Sheryl Crow's character a lift. And within 2 or 3 minutes, he offers her a drink from a flask in the truck. And we then find out that it's poison. And we see him carry her into a bathroom and stage it as if she had injected herself with something. And it's at this moment, and I can still remember the first time I saw it thinking, wait, because I had the luxury of not knowing much about this film before I watched it. And I'm watching that and I'm thinking, did he just do that? Did he just kill her? And then he starts narrating about his methods and about how he never really wants to hurt anybody. He just wants to bring them to their conclusion that in his mind he's determined is inevitable. And thinking, what am I in store for with this film? Because I had never seen it. I'd never seen a film that dealt with someone who murdered people as more of a psychological character story, or a film that was brave enough to let the main character, and the character that has the voice, and he is the narrator in this film, be the evil serial killer. And it doesn't feel, a lot of films that deal with violence and murder and mayhem get criticized because they sensationalize it. They do it in a way that's what I often refer to as popcorn violence. And this film doesn't feel like that. This film seems like something you could show students in a psychology class. And what's really eerie about it is it shows how much of a grasp and a handle Owen Wilson's character, has on society. He's got us figured out. He knows what makes us tick. And he says in the film, I just take someone's natural momentum and bring it towards me. And it's not because he's got superpowers. He just sits back and he listens. And he has that aura of someone that you can trust. And unfortunately, plenty of people in this film do. And he eventually moves in with Doug and Jane, played by Brian Cox, and Mercedes Rule, and immediately becomes kind of like a part of the family, almost like an adopted son. And watching him effortlessly manipulate them simply by listening, he easily picks up on what makes them tick as people. And the way in which he will take someone and just snuff out their life. And what's interesting is the detachment that he possesses. You don't ever even get the feeling that he disliked the person that he killed. It's just, for him, that was just something he was going to do in the moment that day. The way that we wake up, brush our teeth, do what we do, go to work, do that. That was just something that he was going to do that day. And watching someone do it with that matter-of-fact attitude. And one of the scenes later in the film that was really eerie is he has killed the star football player of the town. And the town's come together and organized this search party, and they're going to look for him. And he's at a church service, and he's sitting there thinking, and he says in the narration, I could put a stop to this with one sentence. I could stand up and this would all cease. I can answer everybody's question. I could put this all to rest. And he seems to find that fascinating. And he seems to, it's like we're amusing to him. People are. It's almost as though he views people as lab rats. And he just conducts his experiments and sits back and watches. And he says also in the film, I was sitting there thinking how if I'd never come through this town, none of this would be taking place. And again, he says it as if that's just kind of an amusing fact. And he's indifferent to it. He has no animosity towards the person that he killed, towards their family. It's just he does it and sits back and watches. Janine Garofalo plays the character Farron, who it's the one element in the film where he develops what seems to be a romantic attachment to someone. And even with her, there's this, it almost seems like he possesses humanity at times, and that he does care about her. And yet at the same time, we're watching this thinking, what's going to happen? And there's scenes with them together that come off as tender and sweet. And that's what's so mind-boggling, because we know what this man is capable of. We know what he can do. And there's a scene later in the film with the two of them where he crosses a line. And she fights him off. He seems as though he's going to try to force himself onto her. And she puts up a struggle. And he just kind of steps back and leaves. And we're sitting there watching that thinking, so in this situation, her resistance was able to fend you off. And he just walks out the door. And up until this point, he seems like the shy guy who's too nervous to even make a move with her. So every time we think we've kind of got a hold on this character, something else happens that says, no, you don't know what makes him tick. We don't really even know if he does. And he said there's no real rhyme or reason in the film to what I do. And one of the more interesting scenes in the film is he has these scenes with these two detectives that are nothing but figments of his imagination. And one of the detectives is played by Dwight Yoakam. And the inner dialogue, when you realize that these are not real conversations, these are conversations that are taking place in his head, and how they're demanding things from him, and how you can't really say that he has a conscience, but maybe as close as he has to one is there his voice of reason saying, eventually this will come down, eventually your luck will run out, eventually you'll have to answer for this. But that's as far as it goes with him. Not what you've done is wrong, but you can only get away with it for so long. And that's as close to a conscience as his character has. And Owen Wilson is somebody, I have to admit, I've never been that big of a fan of anything he'd done. I always just saw him as somebody who was Ben Stiller's sidekick. I would not have expected a performance like this from Owen Wilson. It is the antithesis of the Anthony Hopkins Hannibal Lecter. I actually fell asleep during that film. This performance is so quiet, so restrained, so original, and when it's over, you'll honestly, whether you like it, whether you don't, you will at least have to acknowledge it was an original performance. And Owen Wilson had done a portrayal of a serial killer that you can't watch it and say, oh, he modeled it off of this. If anything, at times he seems like the ne'er-do-well fool who's just stumbling through life. And then we find out he's anything but. This is one of those hidden gems that came out in 1999 that I had never heard about, and I'm assuming a lot of you maybe have never heard about. Please watch it. When it's over, you'll immediately want somebody else to watch it just so the two of you can discuss it later. So it is worth your time. I hope you take my word for it. Until next time, thank you.